Want to be happy? Build a life, not just a business. Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and this channel was created to help you overcome the #1 challenge that is holding you back, a lack of belief in yourself. You watch these videos because you know there's something more inside you too. You've got Michael Jordan level genius at something. So today, let's live your best believe life and get the best video for Elon Musk motivation. Enjoy.
Young people globally who want to be like Elon Musk. What's your advice to them?
I think that probably they shouldn't want to be.
You?
I think it sounds better than it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as much fun being me as you'd think. I don't know.
You don't think so?
No. There's definitely, it could be worse for sure, but it's, I'm not sure I'm not sure I want to be me.
Okay.
But if, you know, I think advice, I mean, if you want to make progress in things, I think that the best analytical framework for understanding the future is physics. I'd recommend studying the thinking process around physics, like not the equations. I mean, the equations certainly they're helpful, but the way of thinking in physics is it's the best framework for understanding things that are counterintuitive, and you know, always taking the position that you are to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong over time. I think one of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. You know, like you want something to be true, even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, it's certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong and your goal is to be less wrong, and solicit critical feedback, particularly from friends. Like friends, particularly friends, if somebody loves you, they want the best for you. They don't want to tell you the bad things. So you have to ask them, you know, and say, really, I really do want to know. and then they'll tell you. You don't need college to learn stuff, okay? Everything is available basically for free. You can learn anything you want for free. It is not a question of learning. There is a value that colleges have, which is like, you know, seeing whether can somebody work hard at something, including a bunch of sort of annoying homework assignments, and still do their homework assignments, and kind of soldier through and get it done. You know, that's like the main value of college. And then also, you know, if you probably want to hang around with a bunch of people your own age for a while instead of going right into the workforce. So I think colleges are basically for fun and to prove you can do your chores, but they're not for learning. I think failure is bad. I don't think it's good. But if something's important enough, then you do it even though the risk of failure is high. And so I think my advice if somebody wants to start a company is they should bear in mind that the most likely outcome is that it's not going to work. And they should reconcile themselves to that strong possibility. And they should only do it if they feel that they are really compelled to do it, you know. Right. Because it's going to, the way starting a company works is like, usually in the beginning, the very beginning, it's kind of fun, and then it's really hellish for a number of years.
You talked about chewing glass.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine who's a successful entrepreneur, and started actually his career around the same time as I did, and he has a good phrase. His name's Billy. He said, "Yeah, you're starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss." And
you agree with that?
Generally true. Yeah. And if you don't eat the glass, you're not going to be successful.
Also, if you want to have more self-belief and more self-confidence, I've created a special free program where every day for the next 254 days, I will send you an unlisted video to help you boost your self-belief and self-confidence. The link to join for free is in the description below.
There are just times when something is important enough, you believe in it enough, that you do it in spite of the fear. When you want to do something new, you have to apply the physics approach. Well, we have a lot of good people at SpaceX that, a lot of really talented people. In fact, I wonder, like, sometimes how we can make use of their talents in the best way, because, I think we're often not using their talents in the best way. Yeah, but to the point of the question that was just asked, I want to make sure Tesla recruiting does not have anything that says requires university, because that's absurd. But there is a requirement of evidence of exceptional ability. Like, you just can't, if you're trying to do something exceptional, they must have evidence of exceptional ability. I don't consider going to college evidence of exceptional ability. In fact, ideally, you dropped out and did something. I mean, obviously, we look at, like, Gates is a pretty smart guy, he dropped out. Jobs, pretty smart, he dropped out. Larry Ellison, smart guy, he dropped out. I'm like, obviously not needed.
So,
did Shakespeare even go to college? Probably not.
But one of the fun things for me is watching the cargo go into the crew vessel. All of a sudden we had Dragon 1, now we have Crew Dragon, and it's substantially different but familiar. Mm-hmm. So tell us, like, what's been some of the hardest parts to transition from cargo into crew? Because crew is a little more important than cargo.
Yes, I mean, cargo can be replaced, crew cannot. And so the level of scrutiny, the level of attention is, I don't know, order of magnitude greater. I mean, it was already high for cargo. I mean, but it's just a whole nother level for crew. I told the SpaceX team that this mission reliability is not merely the top priority; it is the only priority right now. Mm-hmm. So we're just doing continuous engineering reviews from now, nonstop, 24 hours a day until launch. Just going over everything again and again and again. And I was out at the pad just recently, just walking down the rocket. We've got a team that's just crawling over the rocket in the horizontal. Then we're going to rotate it vertical. Then we're going to crawl all over in the vertical. And we're just looking for any possible action that can improve the probability of success, no matter how small. Whether that comes from an intern or me or anyone, doesn't matter.
What sort of things do you look for in people or in processes that make the workforce better?
Sure. Well, I think the massive thing that can be done is to make sure your incentive structure is such that innovation is rewarded and lack of innovation is punished. So you've got to be a carrot and a stick. So if somebody is innovating and making good progress, then they should be promoted sooner. And if somebody is completely failing to innovate, not every role requires innovation, but if they're in a role where innovation should be happening and it's not happening, then they should either not be promoted or exited. And let me tell you, you'll get promoted, you'll get innovation real fast. So now your actual total mass of a reusable steel spacecraft is less than that of the most advanced carbon fiber vehicle you could possibly imagine.
Yeah. Wow.
But this happened by accident, by the way. This may sound like some great insight, but it actually happened because we were moving too slowly on composite. And I was like, we cannot move this slowly or we'll go bankrupt. So just do this with steel.
So the design has to be focused on problem solving, otherwise you're going to spend too much time trying to figure it. You don't start with
Yeah, I'm like sort of taking to management by rhyming. If the schedule is long, your design is wrong.
Right.
This is very true.
That's good point.
Yes. Advice I'd give to people starting companies, to entrepreneurs in general, is really focus on making a product that your customers love. It's so rare that you can buy a product and you love the product when you bought it. There are very few things that fit into that category. And if you can come up with something like that, your business will be successful for sure. Tesla really faced a severe threat of death due to the Model 3 production ramp. Essentially, the company was bleeding money like crazy, and just if we didn't solve these problems in a very short period of time, we would die. And it was extremely difficult to solve them.
How close to death did you come?
Within single-digit weeks.
22 hours a day, or like what? How many hours?
Just working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop.
You ever worry about yourself imploding? Like it's just too much?
Absolutely. No one should put this many hours into work. This is not good. And people should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart. It hurts. This is not recommended for anyone. I just did it because if I didn't do it, then good chance Tesla would die. The real way I think you actually achieve intellectual property protection is by innovating fast enough. If your rate of innovation is high, then you don't need to worry about protecting the IP because other companies will be copying something that you did years ago. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, just make sure your rate of innovation is fast. Speed of innovation is what matters. And I do say this to my teams quite a lot, that innovation per unit time, as I go innovation per year, if you want to say it, is what matters, not innovation absent time. Because if you wanted to make, say, 100% improvement in something, and that took 100 years or 1 year, that's radically different. So it's like, what is your rate of innovation? That matters. And is the rate of innovation, is that accelerating or decelerating? And a weird thing happens when companies get big is that most companies or organizations, the bigger they get, they tend to get less innovative. Not just less innovative on a per person basis, but less innovative in the absolute. And I think this is probably because the incentive structure is not there for innovation. It's not enough to use words to encourage innovation. The incentive structure must be aligned with that. That's fundamental. You need to work, depending upon how well you want to do, and particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night, 7 days a week, all the time. And I sort of briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she had to sleep in the office. So work hard, every waking hour. That's the thing I would say particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, say okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. I think of these things as just there's a certain amount of time, and within that time, you want the best net outcome. So for all the set of actions that you can do, there's going to be some of which will fail, some of which will succeed, and you want the net useful output of your set of actions to be the highest. I'm going to use a baseball analogy. baseball, they don't let you just sit there and wait for the perfect pitch until you get a real easy one. They can give you 3 shots. And the third one, they say, okay, and they get off they go back to put somebody else up there. So your 3 strikes on baseball, not on bat anymore. So what you're really looking for is like, what's the batting average? How you doing on score, and just there's going to be some amount of failure, but you want your net output, net useful output to be maximized. Failure is essentially irrelevant unless it is catastrophic.
Don't just follow the trend. So you may have heard me say that it's good to think in terms of the physics approach of first principles, which is, rather than reasoning by analogy, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths you can imagine, and you reason up from there. And this is a good way to figure out if something really makes sense, or if it's just what everybody else is doing. It's hard to think that way. You can't think that way about everything. It takes a lot of effort. But if you're trying to do something new, it's the best way to think. And that framework was developed by physicists to figure out counterintuitive things like quantum mechanics. So it's really a powerful method.
We need to push for radical breakthroughs. And if you don't push for radical breakthroughs, you're not going to get radical outcomes. And that does mean taking risks. And common sense that if you take a big risk, in order to have a big reward, there must be a big risk. It's most of the time you cannot find big reward for small risk. Those are rare. So you're going to have some proportionality with the risk and reward. Simplify your product as much as possible. And then like if I think of some of the ways in which, how does a smart engineer make dumb mistakes, including, is optimize something that shouldn't exist. Don't optimize something that shouldn't exist. But people are trained to do this in college. You can't say no to the professor. The professor's going to give you the exam, and you've got to answer all the questions, or they will get angry. And give you a bad grade. So then you always optimize you always answer the question. A lot of the times you should say this is the wrong question.
Right.
In fact, the question is definitely wrong to some degree, just how wrong. And I think just generally taking the approach that your design is some degree wrong, probably a lot more than you think. Your goal is to make it less wrong over time.
Zip2 started off as basically, like I said, we're trying to figure out how to make enough money to exist as a company, and so since there wasn't really any advertising money being made, we thought we could help existing companies get online, bring their stuff online. So we developed software that helped bring a lot of the newspapers and media companies online, because a lot of them just they also didn't know what the internet was.
You had some big customers, didn't you?
Yeah. And even the ones that were aware of the internet didn't have a software team, so they weren't very good at developing functionality. So we had, as investors and customers, the New York Times Company, Knight Ridder, Hearst, and so we were able to get them to pay us to develop software for them to bring them online, so online publishing stuff. And we did maps and directions and yellow pages and white pages and various other things. 2008 in particular was awful because we had the third launch failure in a row of our Falcon 1 vehicle at SpaceX. The Tesla financing round that we were raising fell apart because the economy was going through tailspin. And it's pretty hard to raise money for a startup car company, late 2008 when GM and Chrysler are busy going bankrupt. That was tough. And then Solar City had a deal with Morgan Stanley, and Morgan Stanley had to renege on the deal because they themselves were running out of money. So it looked like all three companies were going to die, and I was also going through a divorce. So that was definitely a low point.
So it's 2008. You're going through a divorce, which like some, to borrow your word, douchebag bloggers are writing about to make even worse.
Right. Yes, that's true. In addition to all that stuff happening, I was getting dumped on massively in the press.
Right.
Yeah.
It looks like all three companies are going to fail. I mean, why do you keep going with all three? Like, I feel like even a lot of great entrepreneurs in that situation would have been like, I've already sunk everything I have in these companies, and I got to pick one. But you didn't. I mean, you kept doing all three. Why?
That was a very tough call. At the end of 2008, that was probably one of the toughest calls I've had to make, because I could either reserve capital for one company or the other. I mean, fortunately, SolarCity didn't need a ton of capital, so they were okay. But between SpaceX and Tesla, it's sort of like if you've got two kids, and what do? Do you spend all your money to maximize the probability of success of one, or do you try to keep both alive? Fortunately, it worked.
How, aside from making great products, how do you get people excited about Tesla? There's a lot of people I know and that I talk to who are just intrigued and interested and excited about Tesla as a company.
The thing I really focus on at Tesla is like really put all of our money into and attention into trying to make the product as compelling as possible. So, because I think that the way to sell any product is through word of mouth. So if somebody gets the car, they really like it, and actually the key is like to have a product that people will love. And generally people, if they're at a party or talking to friends or whatever, you'll talk about the things that you love. But if you just like something, it's okay. You're not going to care that much. But if you
get
love
the reactions from the highs and the lows, so you got to make sure people really love it.
You're going to talk, and then that'll generates word of mouth. And that's basically how our sales have grown. Like we don't spend any money on advertising or endorsements so anyone like buys our car, they just bought it because they like the car.
Zip2 happened. You sold it and
bought the McLaren,
and if I'm not mistaken, you invested most of that money into your next venture, X.com.
That's right. Most of the funds went into X.com, which was later renamed PayPal. That worked out pretty well.
It worked out pretty well, but looking back on it, because you put a lot of your eggs in that basket. Would you advise entrepreneurs to roll the bones quite the way you did?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think it's worth investing your own capital in what you do. I don't believe in the sort of other people's money thing. I think if you're not willing to put your own assets at stake, then you shouldn't ask other people to do that.